Hello and welcome to part 4 of my video series where we make a complete Flutter app using the Firebase as a backend. So in part 3, I discussed how to connect to your Firebase backend, and in part 4, I'm going to discuss how to read data from the backend and show a list of videos in the app. So before I get started, I added the Cloud Firestore dependency before the video. So make sure that you have this before you start to use Firestore in your app. So if you remember from part 1, we have the UI layer that can access the controller here for the state. And this can access the service, which is where our business logic will go. And then the service can access the repository, which has access to our data source. So there's a directional flow from the data itself up to the UI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start backwards from the data source itself. So I talked about the client class in part 2, but because we have a Firebase configuration already in the app, we don't actually need this. I would use it if I was using DO or the HTTP package instead of Firebase. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it video.dart. This is where I like to put all of my API functions to get the data from the backend. So I'm going to create a new function, get videos. Now let's not put the return type here. So before I get started here, I will show you the backend for Firestore. So I have a video collection here, and I added video 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I just added a document with auto ID, then I put name here. Okay, pretty simple. So back to the app real quick. I want to get that collection of videos. So doing that with Firebase is actually pretty easy. I can say Firebase Firestore dot instance, and then I can say dot collection, and then you give it the name of your collection. So for ours, it was called videos. So single quote videos. Oops, videos. So I'm going to assign this to a variable. I'm going to say var videos. And note that this is not a feature. So down here, I can look at the type, and it's of type collection reference. So to actually get that data, you say videos.get. Okay, and you can see the type here too. This is a feature query snapshot of a map. So I'm going to return this value from here. Then I will put the return value here. So this would be the data type that gets returned from this Firestore method here. Okay, so now what's going to call this? It's going to be the repository, right? Let's get rid of this now because we don't need mock data anymore. And now I want to call that function. So I'm going to assign that to a variable. I'm going to say var snapshot equals get videos. Okay. And this type is going to be different. So for now, let's get rid of that. And now we have a query snapshot here. So I want to get all of the different documents from that snapshot. So doing that is actually pretty easy. So we can go down here and say snapshot dot docs. So this gets us a list of that data here. Okay, so you can see it's a list of query document snapshots. So this is a list of each individual document within this snapshot here. And now I want to return this to the other layer. So return, and then add the return type here. You can see we have our list of query document snapshot maps here. This might look a little bit intimidating, but you just have to understand how Firebase structures the data in the backend. So where do our repositories get called? They get called from the service layer. So the service layer is where all the magic happens with the actual data. Okay, so for this function, I do want to return a list of videos. So the goal is to convert this value into a list of videos. And this type of work should be done within a service. So for now, let's comment this out. And the first thing I want to do is I want to call that repository function. So down here, I can say await because it's a future. And then I will say video repository dot fetch all videos. Okay, make this async. And now down here, I want to ensure that we're getting our data correctly. So down here, I'm just going to print each document. So I'm going to say for var snapshot, and I want to assign a value here too. So let's do var videos. So var snapshot in videos. And then I want to print whatever this is. So snapshot, and then we have dot, we could say data. The map would be this stuff here. So print snapshot dot data. And let's just say void for now. So void. And now we're already calling this from the notifier, but it's expecting a certain type here. So let's just get rid of this for now, just to do a little bit of debugging before we actually show videos. Okay, so we have that being called here. So we're not calling this yet, right? So where do we want to call this? We do know that we're going to be calling the videos in the video tab here, right? But I'm going to call it from the home screen itself because I only want to call that API function one time when the app first loads. So let's go to the home. And here we have a stateless widget, but I'm going to make this a stateful widget. And inside of the state here, I'm going to create the init state function. And I'm using this because this is only called one time. So instead of here, I'm going to call that fetch videos function from our notifier. So if you know provider, then you know how to do that, right? So we say provider dot, and let's import that. Provider dot of, and then we have it of type video notifier. We pass in our context. And because I don't want to listen for changes, I will say listen false. Okay. And let's import this too. And now we have access to our controller. So I'm going to say dot fetch videos. Okay, so that's all we need to do for the home screen. We're just going to call that function when the app first loads, and that's it. So all I want to do so far is I want to verify that we're calling our API and that we have the data that we expect to have from the backend. So let's restart. And you can see here that we have 1, 4, 2, 3. And that's because this is the order of the videos in the backend. This is not the order that they were created in, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so if you go back up here, we have a little error here. And that has to do with the fact that in here, we're setting notify listeners, but there are no listeners. So if we get rid of this now and restart, you see we get the same data, but we don't get that exception. Okay, so that's just a little tip for you. If you don't have any listeners for a piece of data, don't use this function here. Okay, while we're here, let's get rid of these print statements. Okay. So now we have verified that we're calling our API when the app first loads, and we're getting the videos here, the docs, and we're also printing out that data here. So in the service here, now let's actually convert this data into something that we can use in our controller here. We're going to store a list of videos, right? But in our service, we don't have a list of videos yet. So let's make a list of videos out of this list here. So down here, I'm going to map the data to a list of videos. So to do that, it's actually pretty easy. I could say videos.map. So this would be a single snapshot of a document. So let's call it snapshot. And now I want to call this data function again. So snapshot.data. And I'm actually going to put this on a different line because I want to assign this to a variable. So let's go down here. So I'm going to assign this to a map, right? Because it's a map string dynamic. So let's say var, let's call it video map. Okay. This is not a feature. So now I want to convert each snapshot to a video. So down here, I'm going to return, and we'll alter the video object at a later time. But for now, I will return a video. And if you're looking at our video model here, it's just a name and a description. But for now, I only have the name for the video at the back end. So I'm just going to assign the name. So down here, I'll say video map. So this is a map. And then I'm going to get the name field. So name. And then for the description, since we don't have one, I'm just going to make it an empty string. And since we're mapping this, I want to have a list. So down here, I'm going to say to list. So this will convert that map to a list. So I hope that makes sense. We took our original list, we mapped the fields to a video model, and then we convert it back to a list here. And now I want to return this list. Return. And we need to add our return type here. So add a return type. And it's a future list of videos. So that looks good. And we can get rid of this for loop here. So back in the notifier, this returns a future list of videos. So now we can actually assign this to our video list. So we can say underscore video list equals await. And now let's put our notify listeners back in here, because now we're actually going to listen for that video list object to be updated. So the good thing now is that we have the entire layered structure done for fetching videos. We have the controller done, we have the service done, we have the repository done, and we have the actual fetching of the data done. The only thing left is to use the list and create our UI. So let's go to where we want to listen for the list, and that is in our video page. So inside of here, all we have now is a container with some center text. So before I get rid of all this, I want to actually listen for the video list to be updated. So to do that, we use our provider library, and I'm going to create a selector widget here. If you are not familiar with the provider, look at the videos that I did on Provider 3 and Provider 5. So Selector. So let's make this bigger for now. And let's start with the builder here. So for the builder, we're going to pass in the context first. So you can see here, builder, context, dynamic widget. So the context we're not going to use. So let's create an underscore here. And then the second item will be the list. So let's say video list. Third item is a child. We're not going to use that. So double underscore. And then we want to return the container. So let's do return container. So now let's build our selector. So down here, we'll say selector. And then this takes in a context. So underscore, and then the change notifier object. So that'll be just called notifier, I guess. We want to return notifier dot, but we need to actually define it here. I forgot to do that. So up here, this will be of type video notifier, and the value will be of type list of videos. So list of videos. Okay, and let's import that. So now this should be of type video notifier. So now we can say notifier dot video list. So when this list gets updated, we will rebuild this with the current value here. Okay. So let's restart and see what happens here. So restart. And now you can see we have 4 videos here. So now let's create the actual list of objects. Instead of just having the number there, let's create a list. So I'm going to remove the centered widget here and then add a list view. So we'll say list view dot builder. So for the item builder here, this takes in a context and the index here. So for the context, we don't need it. So underscore and then index. And for this, I want to actually return a card widget because I want the videos to be a list of cards. So card, and the child is going to be a container first. So instead of the container, let's do child. And then for the child, I'm just going to have a text widget. So we'll say text. And then I want to show the name of each video in the card. So it'll be video 1, 4, 2, 3. So doing that is actually pretty easy. We have our list of videos and we have the current index. So let's go down here and we'll say video list at index dot name. Pretty simple, right? Let's see how this looks. So we start. And if you see this error, that means that you forgot one important thing. For the list view, you need to tell it how many items there are in the list. So up here, let's say item count. And here we'll just say video list dot length. Okay, restart. Okay, so now we have 4 videos here. So first, let's make the text bigger. So down here, I'll say style, text style, font size. Let's make it something like 20, maybe. So 20, and that's fine, I guess. And let's add some padding to the container here. So let's do padding, edge, insets all. Let's make these pretty big cards. So let's do 32 here. Okay, looks good. And let's add some padding to the list view. There's a padding field inside of the list view class. So let's do padding, edge, insets all. And let's do 16. There we go. So that looks a lot better now. And let's get rid of the purple background. Let's do black for now. See how that looks. That's not enough contrast. Let's make it slightly off black. So black 87. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, so I think that's all I want to do for the UI here. One more thing too, you can see that these are not in order, right? So 1, 4, 2, 3. So the reason for that is because there's no timestamp field by default in Firebase. If you want to actually create timestamps, you need to do that when you create the objects from the app itself. One thing that you could do for something like this is that you can order the objects by different fields. So if you go to the video file here, I could say .collection of videos, .order by, and then I can say the field name. And then we start, and I can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 here. In the next video, I will show you how to integrate YouTube into your app so we can actually show the videos from the Flutter Factory channel. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video where we discuss how to integrate YouTube into your application. Happy coding. Bye.